This is Wisconsin Sports on the Go with Trage, your place for all things Wisconsin sports. Now, your host, Trage.
How we doing, everybody, and welcome into Wisconsin Sports on the Go with Trage. I'm your host, Trage, as we're coming in here on this Saturday. I hope you guys are enjoying your Saturday so far here. I hope you guys are enjoying your weekend since, well, we talked last Wednesday. We were hopeful we were going to be coming into today's show here on this Saturday, talking about a Badgers win, talking about the Badgers taking on their upcoming opponent, whether that was Arkansas or whoever that was. Well, we're not. We're going to call this a Heartbreak Saturday. We're going to call this, I don't know. I don't have my thesaurus next to me to think of other words for heartbreak. So we're just going to go with heartbreak. That's where we're at here on this Saturday. It was we're going to talk a lot of Badgers today. We're going to talk a lot of Badgers. Probably majority of the show, Badger talk, because that was Wisconsin sports in a nutshell. Honestly. Like, we go through these seasons, it doesn't matter the sport, whether it's the Packers or the Brewers or the Badgers, the Bucks, they just stink right now, so that doesn't count, I guess. But we go through these seasons with these teams, and we get our hopes up. There's this stretch of games or a long stretch of games where they look good. And, you go into these tournaments or you go into the postseason and you say to yourself, man, this team gets hot. They can beat anybody. They can beat anybody. But we went into this tournament and we said, I said the spectrum was really wide with this. They can either they're going to lose in the first round or they're going to the Final Four. There is no in between. Well, they did it. They lost in the first round. And man, oh man, it was like you sat there, and I don't know. I don't know if it's just because it's Wisconsin sports in general or if it's just because it's the Badgers. But when they lost this game, I felt heartbreak before, right, with these teams, watching them, and it's over, right? Season's over. And I've been more upset in the past. This season, I just kind of shut it off. And, like, the rest of the day was ruined. But it was almost like accepting, right, that this is what it is. And I think that's a bad thing. That now it just feels like this is Wisconsin sports and this is just what happens. And man, oh man, it just stinks. It does. This loss was devastating, to say the least. Because you felt like going into the tournament, you felt like there was a lot going right for this team. And they had a good Big Ten tournament, and they had a good end of the regular season. It just felt like this team going into it, they could shoot the lights out of a building. They had a different kind of fight and a different kind of battle to them. And I thought that all went away in this game against High Point. I think it did. And honestly, it stunk. It did. But it just feels like we're getting so used to this. So we're going to talk about that today. Christian's going to stop by here in a little bit. We're going to talk about that. We're going to talk about our reaction coming off this High Point game. But then we're also going to talk about Greg Gard and kind of moving forward with this team. Because it just feels like we're in this revolving door where the regular season looks good, postseason, not so much. So we're going to talk about it here today on the show. We're going to get into that. We're going to talk about, like I said, the High Point game in general. Lots of stuff to dive into with the Badgers here today on the show. The tournament in general, I don't know. After the Badgers kind of lost, you just kind of, like, you watch it, but you don't really feel anything towards the tournament anymore because your team's kind of out. So you're just kind of watching it, rooting for upsets. I was rooting for a lot of upsets, like Siena over Duke. I was like, this would make me feel better if Duke got dropped out of this tournament. Of course they didn't. So you just kind of get in those modes then where I'm just, talking about that. Coming off of this, though, I think, and I'm going to ask Christian this too, but coming off this tournament, I feel like there's way too many people reading into the, Nolan Winter not really committing to come back to the Badgers, or John Blackwell, a lot of these guys not really saying, like, I'm going to be back for sure. That's the day and age of this is where we're at in college sports. This is where we're at in college basketball. This is where we're in college football, everything. You don't have that kind of commitment like you used to have from players. And that's just the way that it is, because money talks nowadays. No matter how committed a guy seems to be to a program, no matter how devastating a loss has been, it doesn't matter anymore. It doesn't feel like it does. Guys are going to chase money. Nowadays, it's life-changing money guys can make going different places. So I am not surprised that you didn't have commitment from a lot of these players. But you just came off of a heartbreaking loss. Now, I know reporters' jobs is their jobs are to ask these questions and to ask the tough questions after losses like this. They're going to. But the answers that you got were from guys who just lost the game not too long ago and have now they went through this whole season with these guys, and now they have to kind of let it all set in, reflect, get on, get back to whatever they were doing. It's a tough moment for players, and I'm not one of those guys, but I can feel that it's a tough moment for those guys. So for us to come off of that and kind of overreact, I just don't agree with the overreaction right now. I feel like fans want to know, right? You want to know because it's your team, your favorite team. You want to know what's going to be happening in the upcoming time or the upcoming year, stuff like that. You're not going to get those answers right then. So I'm not going to overreact until it happens. But we have a lot to dive into today on the show. Christian's going to stop by next. We're going to talk some Badgers with him. A lot of Badger talk coming at you today. We'll be right back here. Wisconsin Sports on the Go with Trage. I'm your host, Trage, as we're coming back in here on this Saturday. That jump around was supposed to be going into this Saturday segment. Happy previewing the next matchup here for the Wisconsin Badgers. And, well, we have only heartbreak to talk about once again with the Wisconsin Badgers. Another tournament berth, another early exit, and it just adds to the resume of Greg Gard's failures with teams in the postseason, which once again has brought the Gard haters out of the woodworks, and we're going to talk about it all today here in this segment as Christian is stopping by today. Christian, how we doing on this Saturday? How are you doing outside of, well, we don't have Badger basketball, really.
Yeah, well, I mean, it's I'm just like the worst part of this whole thing is now it's because Wisconsin doesn't have like a baseball team or anything like that. It's a long time until August.
Yep.
It's a long time, man.
Yep. And all I heard coming out of spring practice was the first day was terrible. So that made it even better. I mean, I know it's first day, but when you go on Twitter after the basketball game and you see the first tweet from like Evan Flood and they're like, yeah, today's football practice was terrible. And I'm like, oh, great. Here we go.
Yep.
Here we go.
Exactly what we needed.
Football season to start out. So, all right, we got to talk about it. I text Christian today and he asked me what we're going to talk about. And I said, well, we got to talk about that Badger game. He's like, do we really? I was like, yeah, kind of got to, right? I know it's Saturday and it's been a couple days, so we've all had a moment to relax. And I want to hear your guys' opinion on that Badger collapse or whatever you want to call it there against High Point. Hit me up, 715-990-4914. That is 715-990-4914. So, Christian, I just want to hear it. Instant reaction when that final horn wins. Nick Boyd ended up missing getting blocked on the layup attempt there, and everything just kind of set in for you. What was your instant reaction just coming off of it?
I think obviously the first one is just disappointment, right? But we've talked about that. I don't know, and I know a lot of people have been mimicking it over social media and stuff too. It's all the same thing, but they could beat anybody. We've seen it. They beat the number one team, Michigan. They've beaten, number one seed Michigan, beaten Purdue. They've beaten Illinois. But, we also knew that they could lose to anybody just because it's March, first of all, and March Madness is just crazy. That just comes with the territory. But at the same time, it's just a really volatile team. So but they didn't lose necessarily in the way I thought they were going to lose. So I think that's why I was most disappointed. I think they did a halfway decent job shooting. I think the thing that killed them was their rebounding, which I think what the sad part is, it feels like it was all just effort because they were way bigger than High Point. The tallest guy that got minutes on that team was 6'8". So, I don't know. When it comes down to it, and you could just see it too. I don't know how many times I saw a shot go up, and then you got 3 High Point guys in there and 1 or 2 Badgers, and they're just kind of standing there, and it was disappointing that I don't know if we've seen it earlier in the year too, but if it's a team they think that they're just going to beat, not saying that they actually thought that because it's the NCAA tournament and High Point's obviously very good, but it just felt like the energy wasn't there. It was Nick Boyd. It was John Blackwell in the first half. Obviously Nolan Winter was still coming back from his injury, but I don't know. I was hoping they'd be a little more aggressive, especially rebounding and just limiting second chance points. And they didn't do that. And then I think High Point got some confidence, especially that Johnston guy or whatever his name is, the guy that has taken 4 2-pointers all year long. And then, of course, and it goes 0 for 4. And then, of course, hits the layup to go ahead with, just a few seconds left anyway. That's pretty ironic, isn't it? So I guess I don't know if I had to say, it just boils down to one word, it's just disappointed. But yeah, I know we were talking to, it's just, at this point, just being a Wisconsin sports fan, you're just kind of numb to disappointment in the postseason, aren't you?
It's just kind of what you expected out of this game. Like, you had that hope. Everybody talked about it going to the tournament. This was a dark horse team. They could make a deep run. They could beat anybody. And in the back of your mind, I just felt like it was in the back of everybody's mind out there, including mine, was I've seen this team before go into a tournament. They looked hot. They got cold. They couldn't find answers. They just got out rebounded, out physical. I mean, they came into this game, and like you said, they had the size advantage over this team. And yet it seemed like for the majority of the game, High Point was the more physical team. They played like they were the better team. They played like they had more to gain by winning this game than the Badgers. And it doesn't make sense why you go into games like this and why we see this outcome every single season in the postseason. I don't know. You go back, and we're going to talk about Greg Gard here in a minute, but everybody wants to blame Gard, and they want to say this is Gard's problem and everything like that. I don't know if it as much is when I look at this team and I say, I just don't feel like they were bringing it. I don't feel like they were bringing in this game. I thought that there was way too much one-on-one ball. I thought there was way too much hero ball in this game. I look at a guy like Nick Boyd, and yes, Nick Boyd had a good game. Nick Boyd had a good game. But I thought the Badgers, honestly, Christian, I was sad when I only saw they put up 23 threes in this game. 23. That's it. Honestly, that's a low number. Looking at the Badgers. But what did High Point do? They chased the initial guy off the three-point line. He drove down the lane. But instead of looking for kicks, instead of looking for those shooters on the perimeter, because they were there as they normally are, they were looking for those mid-range jumps. They were looking to try to get to the basket, and High Point was there to deny. They were there to double. They were able to throw some pressure at this Badger team, and the Badgers did not react to it well. The ball movement wasn't there. In that second half down the stretch, there was little to no ball movement, and it kind of made me sad. Because I watched this team and we talk about it. When is this team really good? When the ball's zipping, when they're moving it around, when they're driving the lane and they're finding those kickouts. And I didn't believe they were finding those kickouts in this game. Because when I see only 23 threes, that's not a Badgers team I'm used to. I mean, honestly, you think about the Badgers all season long, 30 was it seemed like a low mark. 30 was a low mark. Now you play a team in High Point and 23 is your mark in this one here. And High Point dictated it by the three-point line. It kind of caught me off guard in that, where High Point was able to chase the initial guy off the three, and they weren't able to get the kick out, which were there. The ball movement just wasn't there in this game. There was too much hero ball. There was too much one-on-one. First half, it was John Blackwell. Second half, it was Nick Boyd. And you like that those two are going so well, but you have guys on this team like Austin Rapp who's hitting shots. Rhodey was hitting shots in this game. But he only took 3 threes in this game, took 4 shots in total. He had 2 of them. I mean, he was having himself a decent day, but Rhodey was not getting the ball. Nolan Winter in this game here only played 21 minutes. They didn't really go into the bench at all, which I thought that, okay, if I was upset, I actually wanted to see like a Hayden Jones in a game like this. I did. Just because this team wasn't bringing it. They weren't playing physical. So I was going into the bench and saying, hey, can you bring me something? Can you find a rebound? Can you get in there? Because I thought, like you said, there was too much standing underneath the basket and just hoping that the rebound came down to me, hoping that it would come down to me. At what point were you just going to say, okay, Hayden Jones, go there for a couple minutes. I have to talk to Rhodey. I have to get into this guy's head. I have to tell him to go get these rebounds. Like, you go into the tournament, you played the Big Ten tournament, and Hayden Jones was good enough to get minutes in there. But when you got into this game, you limited the bench, you shrunk it. You got down to Carrington and Nolan Winter. That was it. We didn't see anybody else in there. Maybe you throw Will Garlock, somebody to throw in there who's going to get me a rebound, who's going to help out in that case in this game, because you got beat, like you said, on the glass. The glass was key in this game here, controlling that. And there was too many second chances. There was too many opportunities like that for this High Point team. They're a good shooting team. We saw that. They can knock down shots. But when they get second chances to knock down shots, that's even worse. And there was too many of those opportunities in this game. And I thought it could have been controlled if you controlled the pace and the Badgers played into High Point's hand. They allowed it to get into that running match, which is where High Point wanted to be. They allowed it to get to that point. Turnovers weren't a problem. The Badgers didn't turn the ball over a lot in this game. Were they some ugly turnovers when they were? 100%. They were some ugly turnovers. There was driving down the lane, trying to find a guy underneath. They had some botched passes go out of there. But when push came to shove, High Point executed. Wisconsin didn't. And I don't know if you do throw Hayden Jones, if you do throw Garlic, if it works out. But what I'm saying is that you needed to find that kind of fight in this game. And I thought there was, I don't know, Christian. Nick Boyd brought some heat. He brought some fight. I thought there was some fight in Nick Boyd there, but I thought there was too much standing around. I thought there was too much lackadaisical play, and that's what ultimately hurt this team down the stretch. I don't know. Is that what you kind of saw in this one here?
Yeah, I mean, I think so too. I mean, so I guess I got some thoughts on like the offensive stuff too, but I think the ball didn't, in my opinion, the ball didn't move well because High Point is a very athletic team. We've seen them struggle with like BYU. Right. And it's like going to the Hayden Jones point. We've talked about this too. When Hayden Jones is in, when there's a lot of pressure, because that's what they did. They brought a lot of ball pressure on you. I mean, I think you're higher on Hayden Jones than I am, but I feel like I've watched him. Just like it feels like when he gets the ball and he gets pressure on him, I get nervous. That's
right.
So like I understand maybe, and we all know that when the playoffs start and when March Madness starts, all that, your rotations get shorter. Like your bench gets shorter. You don't just necessarily give players like Hayden Jones or Garlic a ton of minutes. But I think High Point did a very good job of pressuring them. But also, I think Wisconsin going into this, knowing they had the height advantage, knowing High Point's going to be they're going to put a ton of pressure on the ball. And just having a guy like Nick Boyd, he's going to get past them. Like, yeah, that Rob Martin guy, that little number 3, he's a quick guy too, but if you can get Boyd coming off a ball screen, like get downhill, and we've seen how good he is at finishing. And if you get down there and there isn't a dude down there bigger than 6'8", I get why maybe that was the game plan. Higher percentage shots when you got guys like Nick Boyd and John Blackwell who can finish at the hoop. Higher percentage shots than shooting threes. So that's my theory is, and like then moving the ball around, like you said, isn't quite as easy when those guys are up there. And yeah, they did, like you said last week or whatever we talked. It feels like it's been a long time ago. They were going to do some matchup zone, and it's what they did. And it made those ball screens that Wisconsin runs a lot, it like jammed it up, and it didn't make them quite as successful. Right. So I think they knew how to attack this Wisconsin team. And I think you're right. They maybe, it's weird to say, but they settled for too many like 2s instead of 3s, which is what their bread and butter has been all year. But I don't know. I think the intensity is the thing. I mean, you're always going to get that with Nick Boyd, always. I think you had it with John Blackwell a bit in the first half, but then here it is again. Like he just disappeared. Right. And maybe that's in part because Nick Boyd, we've talked about like, the word ball hog got thrown around a little bit too. But at the same time, it's like, I don't know, maybe no one else was doing anything. So maybe Nick Boyd said, all right, forget it. Like, I'll do it. No one else is going to do anything anyway. So I don't know. I guess it's hard to tell when you're not in the huddle. You don't know exactly what's going on there, but I can see why people would think Nick Boyd just tried to play hero ball the whole time. But at the same time, when he got going, like there was a stretch there for a few minutes where it felt like both teams, it was made basket, shot after shot, and they were just trading blows. And almost every time it was Nick Boyd just getting to the hoop whenever he wanted to. But then this is just like the Nebraska game or any time earlier in the year, our defense just, like, I think that's also part of it. It was their defense. It wasn't good. Yeah. Like, why are we letting guys get all these shots off for like these threes off so quickly and easily? Like, why is number 99 Johnston open so much? Why is, Rob Martin or whatever his name is hitting threes like crazy on us? Right. I just like get a hand up, and I don't know. So I think that's the whole thing was just kind of frustrating. But then again, but also extremely believable because this is just how it is. As this is what they do.
I think part of the hero ball aspect of it is also, and the ball movement comes into all this too, is there's not a lot of off ball movement. And I think the Badgers get really stagnant. They don't move around. And I think that's where I kind of get frustrated watching this team is it does become hero ball because like you said, nobody else is getting involved, right? But that comes with getting yourself open, off the ball, moving, cutting, right? We talk about it so many times this year. This team's a really good passing team. They can find cutters. They're really good at cutting the lane. And you're playing that matchup, zone out there. So you should be able to find cutting lanes. You should be able to find driving lanes. Like you said, it was open to drive downhill, but it wasn't just open for Nick Boyd. It was open for a lot of different guys in in that aspect too. It didn't have to be the ball screen. It didn't have to always be the ball screen to get guys open. It was moving the defense around, finding openings, and that's when you can get an opening driving the lane there and find a kick out. If you're moving without the basketball, and there's way too much towards the end of this game, guys just standing there with that foot back, and they're standing out 3-point line like, pass me the ball, pass me the ball. You're not open. Like, move. Find yourself an opening. Find yourself a passing lane. You're not in a passing lane for one of these guys to get the ball. And that's where I was, I agree. Putting Hayden Jones into a game like this or putting Will Garlick into a game like this might not have been the answer. But when you look back on it, what I was, I guess, trying to say by putting one of them guys into the game like this is maybe they bring that physical edge. Maybe they bring I want this ball, right? Will Garlick, for as much as he's still developing, he's a physical player. He's going to get after it. And I was impressed with him in the Big Ten tournament. So I felt maybe in a game like this, honestly, maybe he'd get after it. Maybe he'd go get me a board. Maybe he would play physical down in the post and find me a rebound. Because at what point in this game was like you just needed a rebound. You needed to slow them down and get a rebound because every single time the Badgers put on a run, they got up by a good margin there or whatever it was, 8-10 at some points there throughout this game here. High Point had the answer, but Wisconsin played into the tempo of it. Then there was too many missed opportunities, right? There was like 4 straight possessions without a shot or without a field goal. Too many of those. Too many stretches where you didn't score, where High Point got life and you gave them life. You weren't able to slow this game down. You weren't able to work at a pace that you wanted to work at. It was trying to force things. It was trying to get, I agree. Nick Boyd going downhill, if he can get there, you love to see it. But you also love to see John Blackwell involved in there, and you love to see the kickouts, and you love to see the ball movement, working clock, hunting for a good shot, right? And I just thought there was too much of that top. We're waiting at the top. Mm-hmm. Okay, now there's 15 seconds to go in the shot clock. All right, now let's just drive. Now let's go downhill. Yeah. There's not a lot of ball movement. There's not a lot of working it around, finding an easy bucket. And I thought they did that at times in this game. They really got the zone moving. They got them moved around, and they found open shots. Carrington had a big 3. There was opportunities that they had. It's just very far and few between because, like you said, the intensity wasn't there. And it was on the offensive end, but especially on the defensive end. And that has become a problem now for years now.
It's like, isn't it kind of crazy?
Right. You talk about last year playing BYU. It was the same thing. And then this year, you put up 82 points in a tournament game against a 12 seed. There's most of the time you win that game. Like there's not many instances where you could say no.
Yeah, I think that was their first loss where they scored 80 points this year. But isn't it just kind of weird? It's kind of crazy how Wisconsin basketball is just flipped. They used to be such a fundamentally sound, solid defensive team. And, like, offense was always the struggle, right? Yep. Now it's just completely opposite. Like, offense has no problem putting up points, but, like, you can't stop anything either.
Yeah, save that thought, Christian. Save that thought. We're going to hit a break. We're going to come back. We're going to talk about that because we're going to talk about Greg Gard. I know there's a lot of people questioning Greg Gard. We're going to talk about that, but we're also going to talk about the philosophy of this team because, like you just said, the offense is going great, but the defense of this team is really taking a slip. We're going to talk about that. Greg Gard, everything in between. We'll be right back here. Wisconsin Sports on the Go. We'll be right back. That song coming back from the break was just perfect because right now across the Badger universe, we have a lot of people who, came out of the woodworks, like I said, to want to fire Greg Gard coming off of this tournament. Collapse, heartbreak, devastating loss, whatever you want to call it. There's a lot of them people out there. And, when you talk like that and you even think like that, you're playing a gamble. And that's what you do with any kind of coaching change. So you got to remember that when you make those comments out there. So this is Wisconsin Sports on the Go with Trage. I'm your host, Trage. We're coming back in here on this Saturday. We were just talking about the Badgers a little bit there. The loss to High Point, the collapse, right? Excuse me there, against High Point there on Thursday. If you guys missed any portion of the show today here, make sure you listen across all the podcast platforms next day. Wisconsin Sports on the Go with Trage. If you want to give us your opinion on Greg Gard, the Badgers, anything Wisconsin Sports, make sure you do it. 715-990-4914. That is 715-990-4914. So Christian is back in here. Christian, we went to the break. You brought up a great transitional point, and that was this team's defensive efforts throughout the season. It's not just on this game. We've noticed it all season long. In spurts, it was okay. In moments, it was great. But at other times, it was terrible. In a game like this, communication was bad. They lost a lot of shooters, and we know this team was athletic. They found ways to get open. They did all the little things right? They brought the intensity. As we said, they played with more intensity than the Badgers did. But defensively, the Badgers have been like this all season long. They've been like this for multiple years now, which brings us back to the man himself, Greg Gard. And the way that his teams are built now is they're going away from the defensive end. The way that he's kind of doing it now is they're going away from the defense. They're going for a high amount of shots, a high level amount of threes, and defense has not been really underneath the microscope anymore, which is crazy to think because you talk about a Badger team where multiple years ago you'd have said games like this, even scoring 82 points was crazy. And if they scored 82 points, the other team only scored probably 50 or 60. That's just the way it went. Nowadays, not so much. This team defensively just hasn't been able to bring it in a while. So looking at Greg Gard right now, there's a lot of people looking for his job because you had once again this team fall early in the tournament. They looked good in the regular season. They had some early hiccups, as we saw. Had a good regular season, good tournament run there, the Big Ten tournament, lost to Michigan there in the semifinal. But now, once again, we're talking about an early exit, which has led to a lot of Badger fans upset, calling for the job, which is understandable, I guess, to an extent, if you use the argument of you always want to see postseason success. You always want to see them move on. I don't know, Christian. I'm going to let you start with this one. Coming off this game, coming off another collapse of a season where you felt like it was a game that the Badgers should have had. It was an opponent that you felt like the Badgers were better than, and you had a team come out once again kind of sleepwalking. Like you said it perfectly throughout the season. When they played lesser teams, they love to play with their food, right? They love to play with it a little bit. And you saw the Badgers come out once again. It looked like they were playing with their food. It felt like they didn't ever feel like there was pressure on this game. They didn't play with that intensity. They didn't bring that fire like we saw in many other games, and it led to another collapse. Now, coming off of that, what are your thoughts on Greg Gard after this? After with all the people coming out of the woodwork saying that calling for his job, what are your thoughts?
I don't know. I think I'm in the minority right now. I think I'm still confident in him. I still think he's a great coach. People are just gonna, I don't know, whatever. I think he's a good coach. I truly do. I think he knows what he's doing. My gripe with him, if I had one, would probably be his end of game, end of half situational stuff. Like genuinely, sometimes I'm just confused. Like it's just maybe the strategy is just to get the ball in the hands of your best player or your best playmaker and just let them do what they do. But I mean, I'm just not to beat a dead horse, but if we're going back to the High Point game, I think everyone knew that Nick Boyd was going to be the one that was going to take that last shot, right? Everyone knew. We all know he's going to drive left, try to get to the hoop.
Yep.
Everybody crashed on it. Like everybody crashed on it. Why didn't we have like some sort like anticipating that? I'm not sure why Greg Gard didn't have like some sort of thing anticipating that where there was a secondary or third option that would probably be open for an easy shot. I don't even care if it was a 3, you know?
Yeah.
But go for the win. Go for I don't know. That's my gripe, but I think there has not been many coaches out there that has done more with less than Greg Gard has.
Right.
I don't know how many people follow NIL or, you know, obviously Wisconsin doesn't sit there and throw money out there, like throw numbers out there because why would they? But I just things I've heard are Wisconsin, the university gives Greg Gard almost nothing. And it's almost all going to the football team now. And they need all the help they can get. But like, and Greg Gard again is just showing like the university, like how much he can do with how little they give him. So why would they give him more, right? But I think most of everything he gets, a lot of it's from donors and fundraising. So I know like I had someone try to call me out on Twitter or something about that the other day. It's, well, yeah, they have money. How else you don't get Nick Boyd? Well, yeah, no kidding, right? But it's not like the university is the one giving them how much money. They don't have the budget that Michigan or Indiana has. I don't know if you on Twitter, what was it, Front Office Sports, that Twitter account, they published something. And it got a little skewed because everyone thinks it included NIL money and stuff, and it didn't. It was just like the team's operating costs for basketball. And Indiana was like by far the number one team in the Big Ten, and they didn't even make the big dance. Right. So they're supposed to be like a blue blood basketball program. Wisconsin, on the other hand, I thought I heard the number. I might just be pulling on my butt here, but like I heard around 12 million or even less was what they were using for their roster and everything, which, I mean, you think about it, they got about 14 guys. That's, whatever. So maybe they're not doing too bad, but I'm sure Nick Boyd was probably around 2-3 million if I had to guess. So he probably, and I'm sure it wasn't cheap keeping John Blackwell on, because I know there were teams that came sniffing around last year in the offseason that made him a huge offer. Obviously he took less to stay with Wisconsin. Anyways, I digress. I think Greg Gard has done so well with a lot less resources. And I could just argue with anyone saying, yeah, it's frustrating. Like, we can't quite get over that hump. But at the same time, like, the grass is not always greener. And we've seen that. We let go of Paul Christ. Granted, he was kind of on going down a little bit, whatever. And they took this huge swing, paid a ton of money to get Luke Fickell, and it hasn't paid off. And now they literally cannot afford to get rid of him either. So before anyone just wants to, really, really quick jump on the message boards and, try to get Greg Gard fired, it could be worse.
Right.
But
right.
I'm not trying to sit here and say, like, I know we talked about this over the break, like, what is happening is good enough, but like, we're making the NCAA tournament almost every year. And once you're there, all bets are off. So, I mean, at least we have a chance. It's not like we're Indiana here where we're sitting at home, or Minnesota, when's the last time they've been relevant, right?
Right. I agree. Greg Gard has done a lot with a little. I don't think Greg Gard should be fired tomorrow. I don't think he should be fired going into next season. I think he's done a lot with a little. I think this team, if you want to look at it, and I know we're going to do our season wrap up here in the coming weeks and everything like that, but if you look at a team like this, I think they were missing scrappers. Like, honestly, I think they were missing scrappy players. Like, and that doesn't talk as much, I guess, into the NIL fundage and all that kind of stuff, because those guys don't cost you a lot, right? We talked about it. We talked about a couple weeks back, and we said, would you rather have one guy who's worth 11 million, or would you rather have three guys who are going to give you everything for $1 million a piece? I take the $1 million piece guys. I thought this team was missing those scrappy guys, right? Like a Carter Gilmore or a Kamari McGee, or even a Max Klesman, right? Those guys who just give you everything they have, and they just keep coming and coming and coming at you. And there are those guys on this team. I'm not saying that this team doesn't have those scrappy guys. Nick Boyd showed it. Andrew Rohde showed it. We saw these guys play a tenacious kind of basketball many times throughout the season. I just think you were missing some of them guys. And who knows, right? He had this transfer portal class where he brought in Elijah Gray. And I'm not saying Elijah Gray was going to be the greatest thing in the world, but he had another guy to this recruiting class, right? I think he was a 6'9" guy. He was coming out of Temple, I believe. I'm not saying he's going to be the greatest player in the world. And I'm not saying that he went to Temple, because that's just off the top of my head. I think he was somewhere in there.
It was Temple. You're right.
I think it was Temple. See, Christian
was Temple, I think.
He's giving me a look like I was.
I had to think. Like, where was he from? Because that was so long ago before he had kicked off the team.
I just winged that. That's crazy. I remember the things I'm not supposed to, but in math class that was terrible. But anyways, I mean, you had another guy, and maybe he would have worked out. Maybe he would have been great. Maybe he would have been the missing piece to this team. I don't know. I don't know that, because it didn't happen. But what I'm saying is that Gard has done a good job, like you said, with little. And he's done it for years now. Jack Janicki's been banged up. Jack Janicki was not able to go in this game against High Point. Maybe he brings that kind of fire and leadership to the floor to calm everything down. He was known as a leader throughout the locker room, throughout the huddle. Maybe he would have been a difference in this game. I don't have those answers. But what I do know, and like you said, it's not good enough right now. It's not good enough. Now, do I think Greg Gard's the right man to fix it? Man, I hope so. Because, like you said, I don't know if it's always greener on the other side. And that's why I played the song Gambler going into this segment, because I wanted to make a statement that it's not always greener on the other side. You don't always have that best option. I know a lot of people said, oh, why didn't you hire Tony Bennett when he had the opportunity? I don't know if Tony Bennett would have been the right fit, because he would have left.
Guess what?
Once NIL started,
he's done anyway. Yeah,
right.
Exactly.
He'd been gone. He'd been out of here. He didn't like where college basketball was going, which all respect to him. I understand why he left the game. I get that. But the way that Tony Bennett was playing the game of basketball too wasn't working anymore, because the defensive end, you had to have some kind of up-tempo like the Badgers are playing now. But now it's about finding the happy medium. Because I think where Greg Gard is failing right now, and I think everybody can agree to this one, the defensive end has stunk. And where this team needs to address is the defensive end of the floor. And whether that's finding guys out there in the transfer portal, whether that's hoping guys like Kingser, maybe, I don't know if Jack Robinson's ever going to see the floor for the Badgers, but maybe a guy like that, whatever. Maybe one of them guys.
Doesn't feel like it.
It doesn't feel like it. I think he's a decent enough shooter, but it just sure doesn't feel like he's ever going to find or develop into the guy. But maybe he does. I don't know. You never know in an offseason what could happen. He's got some talent. We know that. We saw him playing high school, and I thought he had some talent, so we'll see what kind of happens there. But maybe one of those young guys steps up. Bielauskis coming into his second year. Austin Rapp getting bigger, playing with the program for another year, talking about him being back. Other guys on this team, the young guys, Kingser, like I said, Hayden Jones, they're bringing in Ball. Guys like that are going to come in. Maybe they bring some of that fight, some of that tenacity to this team because it just feels like they lack that physical edge. And it feels like it kind of goes away from this team, whether we can say Nick Boyd always plays physical, or we can say John Blackwell does, but then he goes away. Andrew Rohde, he makes his presence known at times, but then he's gone. You have those kinds of guys in this lineup where they're not constantly making that presence known on the floor, and especially on the defensive end of the floor. And that's where I look at this team and I say, if you don't believe that Bielauskis can be a dominant big guy, or you don't believe like Will Garlick can be a dominant big guy, the first thing I'm doing when the transfer portal opens, besides getting a guard, because you're going to need one, is looking at my center position and saying, what big guys are available? What big guys can I go try and get? And I know there's going to be guys who are going to blow the budget, right? And you can't go get them. But where's my physical guy? Where's my guy that if I'm Greg Gard, I can say, hey, I have a post guy. I have a guy that can be just kind of a demon down in the post area. A guy that you don't want to drive at, a guy that you don't want to attack. Because right now, when you look at this team, they have no rim protector. They have no guy that when you go in there, you just don't want to, right? You just don't want to go in there because this guy's in the game, right? You don't have that guy on this team. And I think that's the big thing they lack defensively. Because when you have a dominant big, a guy that's just like, it doesn't have to be a 7'5" Zach Edey or whatever, right? It doesn't have to be that kind of guy, but it has to be a guy that when you go in there, it's just, man, I watched the other night there. It was, I was texting you about it. It was Virginia and Duke in that ACC championship game. And the big guy off the bench for Virginia had 8 blocks in that game. He got to the point where Cameron Boozer didn't even want to take it in there. And Cameron Boozer is one of the best players in college basketball. And he didn't want to take it in there because he was getting blocked by this guy. I can't remember his name off the top of my head. It slips me, but he was from Virginia. He had like 8 blocks when I was watching on the game. It was ridiculous. But a guy like that who just protects the rim, that's what they're missing the most defensively, I think, because it negates driving. It negates guys from wanting to go in there because you just don't want to take on that guy because you know your shot's going to get blocked. And then you're looking for kickouts and it disrupts rhythm. Is I guess where I'm going with that kind of right now. Because you have athletic guys. You have guys who can guard guards. You have those kinds of guys in this team. You're just missing that rim protector. I don't know, Christian, is that kind of off base or is that kind of where you're looking right now? I mean, I went off on a tangent there, but is that kind of where you're looking right now defensively or what this team is, or what else is missing, I guess, in your eyes?
Well, I think it's so open-ended, man, because just with today's, whatever, like I know we were talking on the break about the Nolan Winter stuff, and I'm sure we'll get into that, but you just don't. You can't know right now, right? Like you don't know who's going to be here next year. You don't know if John Blackwell is going to jump ship or Nolan Winter or who's going to be here and who won't be, or who's going to happen in the portal. But I think first and foremost, they're going to need a point guard again. I don't think you want John Blackwell being that guy if he's back. So like you got to find that. I think you got to find another small forward to cover for Rohde / Carrington. Multiple goals guys. At least you need another shooter, I think. Yep. So like that, but to your point, I think you absolutely need another big, like a big physical. We need another Chris Vogt guy. Yeah, Chris Vogt or Micah Potter. Micah Potter would be perfect. So that kind of, I'm sure they're going to look for that too. Because I mean, I think Garlock gave some good minutes this year for a true freshman who wasn't even supposed to play. Right. But offensively, he doesn't give you a whole lot, if anything at all. And defensively, he's, okay, I guess. But I'm sure he'll get bigger and stronger, and he'll become more of a presence down there, which is what they want. But, I mean, I think you also need a big 5, a big guy like that can also shoot. And that's where, like, you had a Micah Potter. He was huge for them when they got him. So I think they'd probably look for a guy like that. Maybe, I mean, it's probably going to cost some money, because everyone's looking for probably a big that can bang down low, but also hit threes. So I think that's probably what they're going to be doing. Hopefully, I mean, the only good thing I guess I could say from like another quick exit is maybe the donors are like, we're so close, we're missing a couple. Here's a little, a little more money, see if you can get over. Because I know when Chucky Hepburn left, like no one thought he was going to leave, but it's like, again, life-changing money. Like how can these kids say no? It's like they're setting themselves up. So like, I think they that opened some donors' eyes from what I heard. And they're like, holy crap, we have to kind of keep up here. So they started pitching in a little more. So again, it's back to the NIL. It's really what it is. I mean, if Greg Gard had the money that Dusty May had, I mean, I saw some tweet where some guy was just talking about, oh man, look at what Dusty May did this year he only had this number recruit guy, this transfer portal, as he's like literally the number one guy in that Yaxel Lendenberg Borg. He was the number one overall recruit, caught him. He had like 3 guys in the top 100. Meanwhile, Greg Gard's sitting here with Nick Boyd is probably the top guy they got. I don't even know where he was in the rankings. But then year before that was John Tonje, who was like in the 300s. And like he's the guy, like they just can't go on a shopping spree like other programs can. So I think they're going to have to be selective, and I think they do a really good job with that. And they've done it 3 years in a row, right? They went from AJ Storr to Tonje, now to Nick Boyd. So I think you got something going there. You got to find some, underrated guys, but because you can't afford just to, get in bidding wars with guys. But then again, how far does it get you either? Like I know BYU, AJ DeBansta, I think that was his name. I think we butchered that nonstop. But I saw somewhere he got paid $7 million this year, and they got bounced in the first round too. So like, I mean, that's what the NCAA tournament is, man. It's a crapshoot. All bets are off. It's who's hot. Yeah, the Badgers were hot, but so was High Point.
Right.
So I don't know.
It's who's going to bring it, right? Who's going to bring it going into an NCAA tournament game, and that's where I think when we talk about physical players and you talk about guys with killer instincts, right? Guys who are just going to bring it. And you had some of those guys on this roster, I would say. You look at a Nick Boyd. John Blackwell was just so hit or miss with it when he wanted to or when he didn't want to, right? He was so hit or miss with it. And it was just one of those things where he just didn't have it all click at the same time. And I think that's where it kind of fell apart for him. You watch after the game there, and man, oh man, I mean, you feel for a guy like Nick Boyd. I saw the video of him walking up the tunnel, and he hugged Greg Gard, and he told him that he was sorry for everything that happened there. And then you hear him walking, and he's talking to John Blackwell, and he's telling him, keep going, right? And he's talking to him going up the tunnel. Like, that was Nick Boyd. That was the leader in Nick Boyd. And it stunk. It stunk to see him go out like that. It stunk to see it end like this. But now it's about, okay, like you said, with donors or whatever happens next. It's okay. We've seen this now. We've seen this year after year after year after year. What needs to change? How do we fix this? How do you get over that hump? What's been the missing piece? What's been the missing piece this entire time? That's the question, because it's the same thing year after year. It's the same thing year after year. It's the same heartbreak. It's the same crap. It's the same lack of intensity. It's the same everything. So how do you fix that? Where do you find that? It starts with Greg Gard. And I'm not saying, we're not talking firing Greg Gard, but it starts with Greg Gard, instilling that into his staff, instilling that into his team, going into the season like that. Maybe it's trying to up the emphasis on defense. I don't know what it is at this point, but it's got to be something along those lines at this point here. So, Christian, one last thing before I let you go. I talked about it off the top of the show, and you kind of hinted at there when you were talking. But there's way too many people out there who read way too far into is he going to be back next year? Is he not? Because you see all these guys in their post-game interviews, right? Right after they lose to High Point, a heartbreaking finish to a season where they just played this long season with all these guys, and now they're upset. Maybe they're in tears. You listen to John Blackwell talk. I felt bad for the guy. I was like, I'm so glad that he had such a good coaching staff and team around him that were able to get around this guy and help him out, get through all the hard stuff that he had going on. But you listen to these guys talk, and everybody on social media and everybody around, well, John Blackwell didn't sound like he really wanted to come back, or Nolan Winter wasn't very committed when he was talking. And they all want him. I think everybody wants him to say, man, I'm ready to come back next year, and I'm just fired up to go beat somebody next year. And it's like these guys just lost. They just lost the heartbreaker game. What do you want from them? What do you want from them? Like, this isn't the time. I know the media loves to ask these questions. I get that. But the answers that we got, kind of what I expected, to be honest with you. So, I mean, Christian, what are your thoughts?
Well, hand up. I think I'm one of the people that actually wrote about that, and I caught some flack about all that. It's cool though. My whole point of it was I wasn't sitting here saying, oh man, Nolan Winter doesn't want to be back.
Right.
My perspective is more from like the NIL point of view. It's like, man, things have changed so much where, yes, it absolutely sucks. And I even put in my article that I'm sure people didn't read, but love to just like give me some crap about it anyway. Like, you just lost, but like I put in there, like, it's an emotional decision. Like, it's an emotional time. Like, why would he sit there and say, yeah, I'm coming back, and then something changes, or I'm not coming back? You know what I mean?
Right. Yep.
But I just remember years ago when the Badgers would lose something like this, or, it doesn't even have to be the Badgers, but something like that happens where you knew these players were coming back next year because that's how it is. You commit to a program, you're there 4 years. And you just hear like, it sucks. Like, I can't wait to get back in it next year. Like, we're going to come back better. We're going to change, like there was that mindset of like, yes, you're coming back, and just how different now it is. Like, cause I know like the reporters were asking them like, oh, well, what are you doing next year already? It's like, which I think that question kind of sucks, to be honest, but it is their job to ask it. And like Badger fans are interested, right? So it's like they want to hear that their star players or the players that they have watched the last 3 years want to come back. So I just thought, it's kind of noteworthy. So I wrote about it a little bit, but I just think it is very interesting how it is now, where we always have to ask all these players, well, what do you think? Are you coming back next year, or are you going to explore your options and leave, after this heartbreak and blah, blah, blah. So are people looking into it too much? Yeah. Like, do I think, look at Nolan Winter. He's the guy that like broke down in a press conference because he was so frustrated with how they've been playing, and that's not how they are in the program. So a guy like Nolan Winter, absolutely, I think he's going to be back. I thought it was interesting that like he was completely non-committal about it. Like, and it's solely because like I had some guy tweet at me. It's like, yeah, he has to say that. It's like he's in his NIL negotiation. It's such a different world. And I just found it so interesting. But I think, yeah, people who expect them to just say yes or no, I'm coming back or I'm not coming back is like, come on. Like, you really think they're going to give you a real answer right now after they just went through that?
It's a question that, like you said, you're going to ask because of the way that it is. But like Nolan Winter, I think he went on to say like he wants to be a Badger, and that's what he had to say. But I think he went on to talk about that a little bit. Well, and I think John Blackwell's kind of in that same boat. Like, they want to be Badgers, but it's the way that it is nowadays.
Yeah, and I think the other part of it too is just, sorry to cut you up because I just remember this too. I think another reason that like it kind of like popped in my head or like became like, oh, that's interesting, is because Austin Rapp also said, yeah, I'm coming back next year. Like, this isn't a 1-year deal for me. Like, I loved it, blah, blah, blah. And then you got a guy like Nolan Winter who committed to Wisconsin, has been there 3 years. He has 1 year left. And it's so rare to see players stick it out all 4 years in one program.
Right.
So it's like then hearing him not just being all in a program was maybe a little like, well, that's interesting.
I don't know. Does the heartbreak come back to get guys? That's the question that you always ask yourself.
That's a good question too. Maybe
when you always get dropped in that first round and you have 1 year left. If you're Nolan Winter, I think Nolan Winter has a lot of an ability to go to the NBA possibly and potentially be a guy in there. But if you feel like you're kind of reaching your end and you want to get to that next level, I think Wisconsin's turning into a place that you would want to be, because they are, demonstrating your skills 3-point wise and everything like that. I think they're turning into that. But does the early exits in March kind of get to you after a while? I don't know that answer because I'm not in the room, but does that start to get to you a little bit? I'm not sure on that. You talk about like guys leaving. You look at Miami a couple years ago when they went to the Final Four, and I still remember when I can't remember that coach's name off the top of my head.
Jim Larinaga?
Yep, looked like Jim Boeheim. They were like the same dude.
Yep.
But when he came out afterwards and was talking about it, after they made the Final Four run, they had 8 guys come into him and say they weren't coming back the next year. And he's like, well, what do you mean? And they're like, well, we're going to explore our options and stuff like that. He's like, we just went to the Final Four. What more could you possibly want? Like, we just went to the Final Four. You don't want to just run it back. But like, Christian's throwing out the money side to me right now.
It's money.
Like 100%. Like, that's the way that it is now. So guys not being committed, I mean, it stinks. It really does. And I wish guys would be like Austin Rapp and just come out and say they're going to come back. But you have guys like Blackwell and Winter who are weighing their options, weighing their futures. Maybe, Blackwell's going to go test the NBA water, whatever. I have no idea what's going to happen. Yeah. But now at this point here is when you kind of just, those guys aren't going to be committal. They're not going to say what's going to happen. That's just plain and simple. That's the way it is. So, Christian, I got to run here. Let the people know where to find you out there across social media.
As always, you can find me at Christian Borman on all my stuff. You can find all my pretty much all my writing stuff at the Badger Backer, but you can also find me at Badgers on SI now, contributing for them a little bit here and there. So we're getting pretty big over here.
He's big time, but I told him he's under contract with me, so he can't leave yet. I told him that he's under contract. He doesn't know the rules of the contract. I haven't negotiated the contract with him. I also haven't negotiated any kind of other, NIL money with him or anything like that. I told him that'll be negotiated on a different.
We'll see. Well, I'm non-committal about coming back. We'll see.
He'll be back Wednesday. Don't you guys worry. He doesn't know, but the contract's binding him. He's not Xavier Lucas here. His contract binds him to this show. So when we come back, we're going to wrap it up for the day. We'll be right back here on Wisconsin Sports on the Go with Trage. I'm your host, Trage, as we're coming back in here on this Saturday, wrapping it up for the day here. I hope you guys are enjoying your Saturday so far here. And, just kind of wrapping it up here. If you guys missed any portion of the show here, make sure you listen across the podcast platforms. I'll have it uploaded after the show here is done today. Otherwise, next day, of course, it'll be up there for you guys. Wisconsin Sports on the Go with Trage. You can find it across all the podcast platforms. Like, subscribe, follow, share it out there to anybody you know. I'd love to get the follows and subscribers out there. Right? You get them up. Makes you feel like you're doing something good here. Also, if you can follow across social media platforms, that would be awesome. And if you go on Facebook right now, I have the link to our merchandise sale. A portion of the proceeds goes to Warm Kids Wisconsin to help a kid stay warm this winter. This upcoming winter season, right? It's getting close to spring, summertime, but this is when the fundraising is needed the most to help them out there. So make sure you check them out too. Warm Kids Wisconsin across all social media platforms. It's Saturday. The words are starting to slip on me. I just talked about the Badgers and Heartbreak for about an hour here. So don't get hard on me for words becoming a trouble here in the last segment of the show here for the day. But we have a lot to get into next Wednesday here on the show. We're going to do our Brewers kind of preview for the Brewers as the Brewer baseball is back next week there. So we're going to get into a lot of Brewers next Wednesday. I'm going to have a lot of good guests coming on here. We're going to talk a lot of Brewers. We're going to talk a lot of baseball in general here. We're going to get into all the NL. We're going to get into the AL. We're going to talk baseball in general. We have a lot to get into for Brewer baseball. So I'd love to hear questions from you guys. If you have some questions you want us to answer on the show, Brewer baseball wise, maybe MLB wise, anything like that, we'd love to hear from you. 715-990-4914. That is 715-990-4914. Shoot your questions over there, Brewer baseball wise. I'd love to hear from you. Otherwise, if you have any other Wisconsin sports questions, make sure you shoot them over to that same text in line, 715-990-4914, or hit me up across social media. We can answer the questions on the show here next Wednesday. So with that, that's about all I have for today. I hope you guys enjoy the rest of your Saturday and the rest of your weekend. But until I talk to you guys again next Wednesday, see ya.